Now that we talked about market-proven design methods in part two, let's talk about applying those methods using LandMentor. It's all about thinking differently. I want to talk to you about consulting versus drafting. What happens in this industry because of the automation of CAD, we tend to replicate what other people are doing. If you've ever noticed how most of the apartment buildings popping up today look like one designer did it, essentially they did. They're using the leading architectural package to just use functions within the software, doing what any other designer would do. That's not a part of how we want you to use LandMentor. We want you to use LandMentor to release design innovation, to release your natural talent. A consultant advises. A CAD draftsman simply replicates what others deliver. And that's not what the clients are paying for. They're not paying to have the exact same thing as the competition. What they're paying for is to have a better product to sell to the consumer, just like any other product. So architecture and planning should be interrelated, and that's part of this holistic approach for LandMentor. It's more ideal if the architecture is known before planning. If you know the floor plan, if you know the facade, what's a good looking side of the home, where is the not so good looking side that you might want to hide during the planning process? Where are the views? What are the suggestions that you could do to increase the views? From a young age, a lot of us are conditioned to expect no when asking for something or saying something, such as trying something new. After a while, we might just stop asking or trying new things, assuming the answer will be no, and that stagnates progress. But if you never bring up an idea, the answer can only be no. But what if the answer's yes? I think clients will respect you far more if you make suggestions. What if they say no? Who cares? But what if they say yes? And that's how you move this industry forward. Now I want to talk a little bit about AutoCAD blocks versus LandMentor. CAD, various CAD system uses blocks, which are simple line work of data to replicate things. There are no blocks in LandMentor. LandMentor instead uses groups of data for design. So you learned previously in lesson 1 how the intelligence of LandMentor retains the surface. So we live in a world of surfaces, remember that? And that lines with hundreds or thousands of layers. So that intelligence is in groups. In fact, a group must have a surface to be used. So there's no difference between a LandMentor job file and a group. Any LandMentor file can be treated as a group. For example, if you have a regional map and you want to bring in an entire development into that map, it's simply a group, but we're going to use it for architecture in this example. You'll press File and Open File, and then on your class directory, there's another directory, Houses for Class. Click on that and to get into where these homes are. And you'll select Parker 61_L. That means the garage is on the left side. So that means the primary views are probably going to be on the right side. So then press Open and the group will show up. Each room is clearly defined. Before we defined site, pond, house, well, you could do the same thing for architecture. And now you've got the spatial data and the spatial analysis of the architectural design. Each room the functions are in the fill list, or you can create your own. And the primary view should be defined. A group can contain 3D virtual data. In other words, you could put height on any of the surfaces. So in this case, this plan had heights. Now, in order to use this in LandMentor, you will need a flat site. If the site had varied terrain, then the walls are going to be varied height. So you can only use that on a flat site. This is an example of LandMentor giving height to fences, walls of the house, and then using the supplied 3D models to place in the buildings and then get a 3D view. So it gives you an idea of the spatial data without having to develop in SketchUp or another system the 3D models. It gives you a view of how the interior spaces relate to the exterior spaces. And in this case, it's a legal duplex because notice that sidewall extending from one garage to another, and yet these are individual single-family homes. We're going to use this plan to go into PowerPoint and then add notes. From there, we could save that and put the notes either in a separate presentation or include these notes on the site plan, just as you see it. So we talked before in lesson 2 about different ways we can have density increases. We're going to repeat that in LandMentor here and how that's applied. So again, for example, almost all regulatory minimums, the front yard is at the setback line. And let's say, for example, this one was 76 feet. But in this case, the home third car stall is always a bump out. So that means we're not dealing with a home that's a rectangle. We can have less than 76 feet on the back of the home. And why is that? Why does that matter? Well, if you had a grid, it wouldn't matter at all. But if you had a curvilinear design, what you can have is the rear of the home could be a little bit tighter than a rectangular pad, and that's where we can gain a lot of density because there is no home if that was represented as a rectangle, which most engineers would do. So we could gain quite a bit of density on homes on the inside of the curve if you have a curvilinear design. The angle point is set beyond the rear of the garage just to be safe, because what if they added another couple feet to the depth of the garage? So what we do to create that is to compile every possible home, put them on top of each other, and use the largest possible configuration. The phantom lines, which we put on layer 13, but you can create any layer you want for the phantom lines. That's just in this system. We have those set at the minimums. So the phantom lines is how we're going to design the development, using the architecture as a reference. So we can always be reminding ourselves, where are the views? Where's the nice side looking at the home? Things like that. Now, you'll see that the porch extends further than the garage. Most of the time, when we're working on these developments, if the ordinance doesn't allow for the porch to extend into the front setback, we ask for the porch to be allowed into that front setback. And that way, we're not being punished as far as the builder to have a porch, because if you don't do that, adding a porch is going to impede on the square footage of the usable part of the home. This way, the home doesn't have to sacrifice usable square footage for a front porch. Even if it's a PUD, it's a minor ask, and almost every city has approved that ask. So think of groups as a file that contains the precise geometry and the surface information. And again, in order to actually call up a group and use it, you need at least one surface defined in that group. So there are no blocks in LandMentor. It allows a precision plan to be placed with precision and then used into the geometry. So how does a group differ from a typical site plan file? There is no difference. If there was any difference, I would say it would be the topography is not brought into your file, because obviously you don't want to do that. So the topography is ignored. Otherwise, all the data is there from a normal file. So let's load beginning step 6. And this is what you should see on the screen, which is basically continuation from lesson 1. Zoom up approximately in the area shown with the Z button. Just tap it and hold the left side button down. You remember how to do that. Doesn't have to be exact, and you should approximately see this area. Press Groups, then Add Group. We'll use the Parker 61 left, and then press Open. Select Fixed. Fixed option should always be when the group is used for geometry. The graphic only is for graphic representation, because you will not be able to snap to any of the points of a graphic group. So they're made just for the drawing. The image of the home will float around as you move the mouse. Now, you may not see the surfaces as you're moving the home originally. There's a limit to how many surfaces can be shown, because what if you're on a slower machine? Well, it takes time to show colors and textures, so they might not show as you're moving them around, depending on how many textures are in the group and also how fast your computer is. Using the mouse buttons on the prompt, and look to your right, do not press the mouse left button, but use the scroll buttons. The middle scroll 1 degree at a time, and the right to scroll 15 degrees at a time. Shift right button goes counterclockwise. Don't press the increase or decrease side, because that will increase or decrease the size. You don't want to do that, and that you would have to reach into the keyboard anyhow. And move the model approximately to where you see it here. Once you get it to this approximate location, press the mouse left button and another home will appear. So their homes are approximately spaced. They don't overlap the easement. You see how the magenta lines don't go into the rear setback lines? And put a significant gap between them. It'll make it easier for you. So set 2 more homes approximately where you see it here. You'll notice the middle home is a little bit south of that existing tree, and then press escape. You'll set them with the mouse left button. So why did we specifically choose the left garage instead of the right garage plan? By entering the development and having the garages on the far side, it kind of de-emphasizes the garage and highlights the front porch. It shows more of the architecture. Now, the exception of that is, of course, if you have grades where the garage should be on the high side of the home. So there are exceptions, but when possible, we always put the garage on the far side while entering a development. It just makes it look better. Now, you'll notice some quality differences as we go on these lessons from this quality, and then you'll see some higher quality. The quality you see is directly from LandMentor. 100% of what you see is developed in LandMentor. Now, if you export to SketchUp and use Enscape, the quality is much greater. But then you have to have third-party software. So that's up to you. But we have decent quality using LandMentor and decent speed, both in interactive VR and on-screen and using VR headsets. The next step I want you to do is to zoom a little bit tighter onto the 3 models that you set. And I'm going to show you how to precisely put those models so that you can pass lot lines through them later on. So press points move, and we're going to go inside the middle group that you set and use the mouse left button to select that group. Now, at the end of the magenta line, the lower end, it'll ask you to snap to the reference point, snap to the left button, and snap to the point you want to move to with the left button. And a pop-up will come to say, is that what you want to move? Because maybe you snapped to the wrong buttons or wrong, points. Verify the move by pressing yes. Now for the next model, repeat the same thing. Press points move, inside the group, left button, the from point, left button, the 2-point left button, and verify by pressing yes. Now we're going to rotate the model, the group on the right side, by pressing rotate. We'll go inside the group with the left button, just like before. We want the point to rotate about with the left button, the from point with the left button, and the 2-point with the left button, and verify by pressing yes. And now it's rotated exactly the same as house in the middle. Now, if you're a land surveyor and you've got a tract that is made up of several legal descriptions, and these legal descriptions don't necessarily all agree with each other, as a surveyor, you've got to work this out. It's the same thing. You put your individual legals in, You've got your survey, and then you could individually rotate them and move them until you're happy that your collage of conflicting legals have the enough information for you as a surveyor to determine what the actual boundary should be. And actually, that's how this whole function of groups started. It started with surveying, and it ended up with design over the last 40 years. So when groups are set where you like them, at that time you would blend them. And when you press blend, it'll ask you to point to a group and blend it. But generally you want to blend all of the groups that you set, which would be on the prompt with the mouse right button. Now if you're in the prompt itself, it won't do anything. So you'll have to come out to the window area, and that's where the mouse buttons are active. So you press the mouse right button and all those groups would be set. So are groups really part or separate from the overall coordinate geometry? Well, they are separate until blended. So you can still move them about until they're set. And once they're set, they're blended into the design or the land survey or the civil engineering. So the review of the recommended scenario would be you made the builder aware of the value and added possibility in their designs when you worked with the architect or the draftsman to develop the new models. Or maybe you are the architectural draftsman and the architect, and you're working with the engineer or the surveyor or the planner. So it's about a holistic part of design that's been missing in this industry. And with a holistic approach, you get better design and better results. You import the floor plans that set shapes to indicate where living spaces in the kitchen is located. Now we do have separate videos on how to create that, and actually from that create the SketchUp models to be used later on within LandMentor. And the advantage of LandMentor is once you're in 3D, it could take you hours or days to try to place every little building at the right angle and elevation, where it could take just minutes within LandMentor. So there's a massive ease of use difference between trying to do something in another package and doing it in a more comprehensive package. And even if you export back to SketchUp, you'll save yourself quite a bit of time, and thus 3D will actually be used. You set the home to maximize curb appeal. So again, look at the architecture. Again, what's the nicer looking side of the home? Where are the views from within the home? And if you don't look at the home first, it's not possible to create a subdivision and take advantage of all this extra value if you simply put in your streets, then your lots, and you submit the plan. And it's an afterthought afterwards. And the same thing happens for multifamily. A commercial development, it's the opposite. It's not a view from within the store looking out. It's a view from the street to make an awareness that the store is there so the business could be successful. So it's really more, it really expands beyond this initial concept for commercial, for other forms, but everything's about exposure, views. You made an effort to showcase the good side, the front of the home, and hide rears and sides of non-living spaces. So let's go beyond this. We want you to read in beginning step 7. Zoom in approximately on this area. And we're going to try and experiment with some center lines so that we could save that tree. And maybe we can, maybe we can't. So we're going to go into the arc menu to experiment with some curves. And I want you to press PT Arc PC. So that means we're going to snap to the right side of each one of those magenta lines that are at the front setback with the mouse left button. That will snap to the point. And what happens is in a counterclockwise order, so C, D, and E are important. All curves are counterclockwise. We'll snap to those 3 points and a curve will appear. And that curve, if you look at the upper right corner of your screen, is 284.65 foot radius. So we're going to see where we have a 50-foot right-of-way in this case. So we're going to press offset, snap to the arc you just created, type in 50, and submit, and it will draw a curve opposite of that. So once it does, press escape because it's a repeating prompt, and let's change the centerline layer. We could have changed the centerline layer earlier, but it will show that you can change later on. Now we're going to experiment if 334.65 feet misses those front setback magenta lines on the homes on the north side of the street. We're going to see what a different radius can do. So we'll guess at a particular radius. So press PT, PC, and R, which is a known radius, and snap to the right end of that arc with the left button and the left end of the arc with the left button. And again, counterclockwise, and we'll say 275. Put that radius in the prompt and press submit, and you can see that it does miss visually those front setback lines. So it's legal. So the next step is we know we could go that far. Let's press offset again. Offset that newly created curve with the left button. Go minus 25. Minus, by the way, will always be on the inside of the curve. Positive is on the outside of the curve. And press submit. And now, once you press escape, you get all the repeating prompt. You'll see the curve appear. So this allows us to experiment, and we might be able to save that tree. You can see visually it is further away from the tree once we offset the pavement. It's questionable, but we might be able to do it. So we're going to take and delete those 3 arcs that we no longer need. You could press delete. There's 2 ways to do this. In this case, press delete. And then holding the control down, snap to the 3 curves that we no longer need. And then what you'll do is you'll press the right button of the mouse, and it'll ask you if you want to delete the 3 elements. So press yes. We can do the opposite. We can simply hold control down, snap to the items that we want to delete, those 3 elements in this case, press the right button of the mouse to complete that, and then delete them with the delete button. So you could do it either pressing delete first or pressing delete after. It doesn't matter.